And welcome to today's Quest for Application Technical Support Information Session. Today we're going to cover the fiscal year 2027 Students in the Care of DC Thrives Coordinating Entity Program, also known as SCDC Thrives for short. And welcome to those who are just joined us. As stated, today we are going to cover the fiscal year 2027 Students in the Care of DC Thrives Coordinating Entity Program, also known as SCDC Thrives. This meeting is being recorded today for your awareness, and it will be posted to the grants page on learn24.dc.gov, and the presentation will be shared along with the recording. So without further ado, we will proceed with today's presentation. So a little about who we are. The Office of Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes, also known as the OST Office for short, is located within the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education, which is part of the Executive Office of DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser. The OST Office is also part of a larger network that many of you might have heard of called the Learn24 Network, made up of OST-affiliated government agencies such as DC Public Schools, part charter schools, and OST providers that support, fund, and/or provide high-quality OST programs for district youth. A little bit about the vision of the OST office. Our vision is to ensure that children and youth across the District of Columbia have equitable access to high-quality out-of-school time programs. The purpose of our office is to support equitable access to high-quality out-of-school time programs for district youth that coordinate through coordination among government agencies, targeted grant making, data collection and evaluation, and the provision of training, capacity building, and technical assistance to OST providers. So for fiscal year 2027, the OST office has launched its request for applications, RFAs, for 7 out-of-school time grant competitions for the forthcoming fiscal year, as you can see here on this slide. During today's technical support information session, we are going to discuss the Students in the Care of DC Thrives, or SCDC Thrives, grant competition in specific. If you are interested in the Youth Scholarships grant competition, a separate technical support information session will take place tomorrow. The tech support information sessions for all other grant competitions were jointly held yesterday, April 28th, and the video presentation and PowerPoint slide deck can be found at learn24.dc.gov on the grants page, where you see all of the RFA listings. So as you see here, these are the current 7 grant competitions which have requests for applications open as of last Wednesday, April 22nd. All right, a little bit about this grant competition in specific. Oh, I apologize. My slide moved too fast. The Students in the Care of DC Thrives Coordinating Entity, or SCDC Thrives, RFA invites high-performing, fiscally responsible nonprofit organizations to serve justice-involved youth year-round. Organizations applying must have experience working with justice-involved youth in a secure facility. For the SCDC Thrives grant and specific, grant funds are intended to serve justice-involved youth only, typically between the ages of 12 to 20 years of age, and programming must take place at 1 or more sites with access to justice-involved youth, likely secure juvenile justice facilities. As a coordinating entity, 40% of SCDC Thrives grant funds must be allocated to a minimum of 3 other nonprofits to ensure diverse programming options for the youth served by this grant. The intention of this RFA is to select 1 organization to manage out-of-school time programming for students in the care of DC. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about the youth who are going to be served by this grant opportunity. The SCDC Thrives grant will be awarded to an organization that can serve youth between ages of 12 to 20 years of age, as stated previously. Because this population is highly vulnerable, varies, and it is transient, the population fluctuates frequently, and the length of the stay for youth in these facilities quite often varies. The program should be prepared to serve, but not limited to, youth charged as adults, Title 16 youth, as they're also known as, and secure detained youth, along with youth awaiting placement. Eligible organizations for SCDC Thrives are described as high-performing, fiscally responsible nonprofit organizations. So what does that technically mean? Well, as you can see here, organizations must meet the following components and criteria. To demonstrate fiscal responsibility, you will need to submit your current annual board-approved budget. So that's a budget for your fiscal year. Many nonprofits operate on different fiscal year calendars, and that budget must be approved by your board of directors, in addition to a current fiscal year profit and loss statement. Examples of both of these documents are included within the RFA appendix. In addition, if your organization is requesting over $50,000 for the grant award, you will also need to submit an audit, an external audit, completed by a certified public accountant within the past 2 years. For organizations that do not currently have an audit, the organization must show evidence that an independent CPA is under contract by submitting a letter of engagement from the CPA indicating intent to complete that audit by April 1st, 2027. The audit or letter of engagement must be included within the grant application. For structural requirements, organizations must have a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit status determination letter as determined by the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, and must be in operation for a minimum of 2 years at the time of submission with that 501c3 tax-exempt status. So that would be May 2024 or after. Applicants must submit 501c3 designation letters from the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, directly, and those sample IRS designation letters are available in the appendix of the RFA. Last, organization status must demonstrate good standing with the IRS via 2 distinct years of Form 990 and with the DC government via current basic business license, certificate of good standing, issued by the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, as well as a certificate of clean hands issued by the Office of Tax and Revenue, OTR. And for those Form 990s, they must be completed signed forms, so not draft forms, whether they are 990 EZs, 990 Ns, etc., any schedules filed, but they must be completed Form 990s. The basic business license must also currently be valid through June 30th, 2027 for school year programs or August 31st, 2027 for year-round programs. In this case, for the SCDC grant, there is a year-round opportunity, which we will discuss. Therefore, your basic business license should currently be valid until August 31st, 2027. If the basic business license is due to expire before the end of the program period, the organization must renew the basic business license when it expires and provide a copy to the OST office. Certificate of good standing and clean hand certificate must be dated within the past year as of May 1st, 2025. Now we're going to discuss the grant period and the program periods. The fiscal year 2027 grant period for the purpose of this RFA aligns with the DC government fiscal year, which is October 1st, 2026 through September 30th, 2027, also known as the federal fiscal year calendar, if you are familiar. However, for program implementation, the program period can fall slightly outside of that. So we're going to discuss the timeline for program implementation. SCDC Thrives is a year-round program in which services must take place during and align with the academic school year as defined by the local education agency calendar. And that schedule must continue throughout summer break. And so beginning on or after the first day of the academic school year, which would be no later than or no later, sorry, than October 1st, 2026. And then the program period must end no later than the last day of summer break prior to the first day of the succeeding academic school year, which would be August 21st, 2027. So therefore, your program can begin as early as the first day of school and can end and range all the way till the final day of summer break before the following school year. Now, optional years. While the FY27 grant period does end on September 30th, 2027, the FY27 SCDC Thrives grant is intended to serve as year one of a 3-year grant cycle. That means if your organization is awarded, your organization will be subject to renewal for a maximum of 2 additional fiscal years, FY28 and FY29, which will also serve as option years. As noted here, grant awards are subject to these renewal option years based upon the availability of funding and based upon meeting the performance and compliance requirements for the fiscal year 2027 grant period. And of course, for each subsequent option year. So optional continuation years are not technically guaranteed, but very likely and quite possible if everything goes well with your performance throughout the duration of the first fiscal year grant period. As for total grant award amounts, in total, the OSD Office intends to fund an award over $27 million in grants for fiscal year 2027. And you can see the breakdown here by grant competition. The FY 2027 OSD grant program is by far the largest and also the most competitive. Henceforth, you can see it has the largest funding that will be awarded across grants. For SCDC Thrives, we anticipate only funding one organization, and the maximum amount is $500,000. So please note that the funding allocation for this grant has been increased over previous years, as previously the maximum award amount was $400,000. This allows for additional services to support workforce readiness for youth who are served by this grant-funded program. Applicants seeking $500,000 should demonstrate job readiness services for all justice-involved youth within their grant proposal. And of course, all grant awards are subject to the availability of local tax dollars, which funds these competitions in entirety. While we do not anticipate any decrease in funding, the mayor's budget must be approved, and as is to ensure that these funding amounts stand as is. So for the number of possible applications, please note that an organization may apply for the SCDC Thrives grant along with one OST grant if interested, for a total of no more than 2 possible grant awards per fiscal year grant period. So if you are interested in applying for an OST grant in addition to this grant, that is possible. Now we're going to talk about dosage. So if you are a returning grantee, or if you've been in the OST space for some time, you might have heard this word dosage before. Dosage refers to the days and hours that a program must operate within the grant period. For organizations that apply to serve as the SCDC Thrives coordinating entity, they must offer consistent and ongoing youth development programming throughout the duration of the grant period. The program must operate at least 2 hours per day, 3 days a week, for a minimum of 34 weeks in total. The SCDC Thrives program must also operate during school breaks and provide programming on weekends. I must note that, and I'm sorry the detail did not show on this slide, but the programming, and we'll make sure it does on the website, but programming must occur during non-instructional hours. So if youth are receiving instruction from educators that aligns with kind of a school day schedule and it's formalized instruction in their facility, programming provided by grant-funded coordinating entities must occur not within those instructional hours. The program also, as noted, must operate during school breaks, provide programming on weekends. In addition, the program must provide each youth with access to a similar community-based program after the release from their designated DC facility in order to provide the youth participants with a continuum of programming. On to our discussion of priority points. So last, we'd like to note that there are priority points possible for organizations to receive when applying for this grant competition. Priority points will be awarded to SCDC Thrives applicants who are an existing grantee across any grant program. The exact number of points received will be based upon the final FY26 school year accountability rating. Please note that any existing grantee that is underperforming at the end of the school year, the current school year, will not be eligible to apply for this grant competition. Now we're going to get into the grant competition and how you apply for it in specific, what that looks like technically, as you will need to engage the Learn24 RFA portal. As you can see here, the URL is learn24rfa.cityspan.com. You will be taken to this homepage here, and the URL is included on all the RFA documents as well as our grants page on our website. So trustfully, you should be able to find that information. Of course, we will be sharing the slide deck in case you are unable to locate it. Needless to say, you'll be taken to this homepage, and if you are a new applicant, you must create a user account here on this page. If you are a current or returning grantee applicant, and you have previously applied for an OSD office or request for application, you must utilize your established login credentials for the RFA portal. If you forgot those login credentials or you have changed personnel, you must select forgot username or password to generate new login credentials. If you are having challenges, you can send an email to learn24data@dc.gov. That email address is included on this page, and they can support with login establishment. So we're going to cover here today each section of the grant profile platform within the request for applications portal. So you're going to establish your organization profile. You will then complete organization uploads. You will then engage the grant type form and the grant application, and review and sign off. The organization profile. Now, this section must be completed prior to engaging with the application. So while navigating this section, it has been known that you must save each bit of progress to ensure the submission is received by the system. So when you're entering your primary contact information and your position titles, etc., just make sure you click save. There is a floppy disk icon that will allow you to save your progress. In addition, we have some certifications and assurances, such as has your organization been funded by a DC government agency, potentially been terminated, a grant or contract. So if no or yes, you will be required to just kind of sign off and potentially provide some additional information. But as you're inputting those signatures, just please make sure to save on this profile prior to submission. Once you submit profile, you'll be taken to the next page, which are organizational uploads. So organization uploads. It's a rather extensive page, so I did not include a screenshot here, but ultimately, and we covered some of this information earlier for your awareness, but this is where you will be submitting your organization's current fiscal year board-approved budget, your organization's current fiscal year statement, which includes profit and loss, the audit or financial review. If your annual organization budget is greater than $250,000 and your request exceeds $50,000, you'll be required to provide an audit. If your organization budget is less than $250,000 and the request is greater than $50,000, you'll be required to provide a financial review. If your annual organization budget is less than $250,000 and the request is less than $50,000, no audit or financial review is required. However, for this grant competition, we foresee requests will exceed $50,000. And as you listened earlier, if an audit or financial review is not currently on hand, a letter of engagement from that CPA must be provided. In addition, 2 years worth of Form 990, as I stated, those are the most recent filings. They must be completed Form 990s, not draft copies, but signed off copies as filed with the IRS. the 501c3 IRS tax exemption declaration letter as was submitted to IRS, declaring that your organization has been tax exempt with the 501c3 status for a minimum of 2 years, your current DLCP basic business license, your current DLCP certificate of good standing, and your clean hands certificate. So once you've submitted these pages, you will be taken to the grant application. At this point, you will proceed through each section. So in order to obtain access to the following sections, you must complete the first section. So you must complete program description to obtain access to program sites, and so on and so forth for each subsequent form within the grant application. So for program description, within this form, you'll specify the grant program information, including the selection of the grant competition. And you'll for here, you'll see SCDC Thrives. You will seek to apply for that specific competition. You'll select that grant competition within the drop-down menu. You'll select the grant period. And for SCDC Thrives, you are required to apply for the year-round grant period, which includes school year and summer. And the funding request will be indicated here. So you will indicate your OST program budget and the amount of grant funds that your organization is requesting. In addition, of course, your applicant contact information must be indicated here. And then we get to program sites. So as noted previously, you are required to apply for the year-round grant period, school year and summer. So when selecting your program sites, you must first indicate the location, the geographic location, whether it's in DC or not DC. And then, of course, the type of facilities. They're likely juvenile correction facilities for this grant competition. So you'll be able to find the correct facilities. The addresses will populate once you begin to input the site location name. We do have a global site directory, so the sites have been centralized. So you should be able to locate those sites with ease. Then you will state where they're located, if they're in a priority neighborhood, and of course, the number of unduplicated youth to be served in the areas they're taking place. Aside from indicating the site location, the service period, school year and summer, you will then propose the number of youth to be served within each service period and at each site. So you must indicate the unduplicated youth to be served at that program site, and then the number of youth that will be served during each service period. At that point, you will indicate the number of days, hours that program will take place, and of course the weeks, and specifying various activities that will be provided throughout the duration of the grant period. The following section is support and sustainability. We do highly encourage you to complete each section in depth. There are character limits for each section, and they range. You'll see up to 3,500 characters max. You will have to ensure that indirect costs for your organization are indicated and justified, and if they exceed 30%, please provide those justifications. So, sorry, that went a little too quick there. I just wanted to specify, this is where you're kind of providing highlights on organizational sustainability and the ability to operate the program for sustainable program implementation. Now the budget, the fun part. So this is the final form in the application. Now within here, you're going to ensure that every budget category is completed in full by beginning with indirect cost indication, if your organization has a NICRA agreement with the federal government or not, and then if so, providing that context, and then going through each section of organizational expenses such as staff, supplies, any indirect costs, and other contracting expenses. So for this grant specific, you must contract out a minimum of 40% services to 3 other nonprofits. So you will include those contractor fees here and any other grant-related costs that your organization might incur. So please include specific narrative details to provide justifications on the cost per hour and cost per youth. At this point, you'll be prompted to this page, application sign-off. However, prior to signing off on your application, we strongly encourage you to review the entirety of your application in depth, and also, if possible, have some other eyes on it. Their colleagues, others who are involved with program implementation and or in leadership roles in your organization that might be signing off on the application themselves. It always helps to have a separate set of eyes. In addition, utilizing the scoring rubric will make a big difference. So we highly encourage you to refer to the scoring rubric, answer all the questions in depth, make sure that you are providing direct responses, and do once-overs. Refer back to the RFA. Make sure that you directly respond to that question. Look what the question is looking for. Look what the scoring rubric is going to score based upon the indication of how you've met criteria for that question. And that same goes for eligibility and every other section of the grant application. That said, we are going to proceed to our question and answer session of this presentation. So the floor is open if we have any inquiries or questions regarding this request for application grant and this grant competition. And I will note that also Q&A is currently open and questions can be directed for all RFAs, all FY27 RFAs to Learn24 RFA at dc.gov with responses posted to the website. Thank you to Shanna for sharing that information in the chat box. Any questions at all? If not, that's okay. We hope today's presentation was informative. We'll provide a couple minutes in case any questions arise, and if not, we can close out for today. Certainly appreciate you all for joining us today. We know there's only a few of you. Hopefully you learned something. I'm gathering there are no questions.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you to Georgette for joining us again.
You're very
And
welcome.
To Joy, thank you for joining, Joy. It's good to see you. Okay, Joy has left. All right, well, thanks again. We have a wonderful rest of your day, Georgette. If you have any RFA related questions, you can certainly direct them to Learn24 RFA at dc.gov. Thank you for your continued partnership. Take care. I will stop recording.